We know the Kovitzes are going to be ready for this game. We're going to have all the facts. We're going to know everything that's going on. Oh, let me,
Well, oh, hey, Marcy. Thanks for joining us. I hope Rabbi Apotheker is also with you. I know he's a big Buckeye football fan. Well, we got 8 computers watching us, so let's get started. And uh, first off, I just want to say that based on the events of this week, it might seem trivial to talk about football X's and O's. And in the grand scheme of things, football is insignificant. But I would argue this is the perfect time to talk some Buckeye football because sports is, if it's anything, it's a form of escapism. And this is just, a great opportunity tomorrow night to take our mind off of some things. And, Jeff, I'll let you weigh in here, but I would say that the way that a football locker room, a good football locker room operates, uh, could be a model for how we should all operate in terms of how we respect each other and see beyond race, religion, and all those sorts of things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great point, Bobby. On the teams I've played on, especially in college, I mean, some really good players that I played with on the defensive line, which is what I played, but also on the defense as a whole, and then on the team as a whole. And we had people from all sorts of backgrounds all over the country, and we all had a brotherhood, and we all bought in for the same common goal to win football games, to win a conference championship. And it didn't matter where we came from or what color our skin was or what religion we were. We all had a really strong brotherhood. And it's obviously clearly it's different from how things work outside of that bubble, but it was always a great release to be in that group and everyone working for a common goal, no matter what our, how different we could appear or the beliefs we had. So it's a great sport for that reason, watching teams come together for a common goal.
And I think what's beautiful about football is the only thing that matters is you look to the guy to your left, you look to the guy to your right. If they got your back and you've got their back, that's all that matters.
Right.
Um,
Exactly. And that's one thing I would add to that too is as I was fortunate enough to be elected a captain in college for 2 years, and there was nothing that I took harder than if we didn't get it done on a Saturday or win a ball game, because I always felt like I wanted to do it for my teammates. I didn't want to do it for myself. I didn't want to do it for personal glory. I wanted to do it for the common good of the team. And I know all other guys the defensive line, the defense, and the team thought the same way too. So, yeah, it's a great sport for many reasons, but that's definitely one of them.
and we kind of jumped right in, but for those people who didn't join us last time, all of you in the TBS community know me, but joining us tonight is my brother Jeff Kovitz, who, as he alluded to, was a two-time captain at Bryant University and uh, just had some incredible football experiences. Even kind of you kind of wet your feet at the NFL level a little bit. So um, he's really the subject matter expert here tonight, and I'm just kind of guiding the conversation. So let's jump in. Ohio State, Bama national title game. I mean, these are the kinds of games that you live for if you're a college football fan, if you're an Ohio State fan, and it's just it's so much fun. It's going to be a great game tomorrow night, and um, the last time we played Bama obviously was in 2014. That was Ohio State was the inaugural college football playoff national champ, and there are a lot of similarities to that first game with Bama to this game, and we'll get into some of that. But Jeff, what do you remember from that game in 2014?
I remember it as being a chance to knock off, at the time, I mean, one of the best teams in college football, but a team that was part of, the most hyped up and, in-your-face conference, the SEC. And as a 4 seed at the time for Ohio State against the 1 seed Bama, it was just a chance to prove people wrong. And throughout that season, Ohio State was doubted. Early loss to Virginia Tech, had to battle through injuries, had to, have their third string quarterback, lead them into the postseason. So there was just so much around that, and the doubt that was surrounding Ohio State, even competing against Alabama, was so enormous. The hype for that, and again, leading up with the SEC dominating college football from 06 to pretty much 2013. And it was just every year an SEC team was winning a national championship, and you were sitting there like, I want to get another crack at that. And just having that game and beating them in the way they did, it was so sweet. It was just such a relief. And I know a lot of Ohio State fans, all of them, felt that way too.
Yeah, and it kind of, as you alluded to, Jeff, this run of SEC dominance really began in 2006 at the hands of our Buckeyes, when then Urban Meyer, coach of the Florida Gators, beat Ohio State 41-14 in the most embarrassing fashion possible. And we'll get into this, but that game is going to come full circle just in terms of how Florida did what they did and how that might play into what Ohio State's going to try to do to Alabama. But that game, the next year when Ohio State played LSU, created this whole narrative of the Big Ten, Ohio State can't compete, Ohio State's fat, Ohio State's slow. So when Ohio State put the sledgehammer to Bama in 2014, that kind of silenced this talk and brought the Ohio State football program into, I'd say, the modern era of college football. We were no longer, Jim Tressel and a team that was based on, defense and the kicking game. We were, a complete team that has NFL talent everywhere. And I just want to share one of my favorite plays of the game. Let me just find it here. Was Steve Miller's pick six, and we'll set that up. So let me just get this here. So this is early on in the third quarter. Heading into halftime, it was 21-20 Alabama. Ohio State has a quick strike to open the third. Cardale Jones to Devin Smith down the right sideline. That makes it I think it was a 27-21 game at the time, or maybe Ohio State.
Yep, 20.
And then on the next Bama possession, this happens. And we're going to talk a little bit of X's and O's. I forgot to mention that. So, Jeff, I'm going to play this, and I want you to explain what happened.
All right. Ohio State has owned it. Alabama has suffered because of it. Well, look at the average yards to go for Alabama. That's a manageable distance, but a very poor average so far. Yeldon back in there. He and Fowler switch places. Sims, quick throw, intercepted. Picked off by Steve Miller. Miller. Defensive lineman Green. Touchdown.
All right, so that's your classic zone blitz, which, Jeff, I'm sure you've done a couple of times. What does that mean?
Right. So first off, just from watching the Clemson game last week, that's exactly what Brett Venables does, the defensive coordinator for Clemson, just bringing certain guys and dropping other people. So what happened there was that it was 3 down linemen, 3 linebackers, and they ended up bringing pretty much 2 or 3 of the linebackers and dropping out the defensive end to cover the linebackers in coverage. And the defensive end on the right, Steve Miller, just faked like he was rushing the field, drop back maybe 5 to 10 yards in the flat, and he's just covering anything underneath there. If a back was dropping, if a receiver was doing a curl or a quick route, quick out, he would just be there taking up space, trying to give the quarterback something to look at, saying, oh, there's a defender there, I can't throw it there. And, Blake Sims, good quarterback, but he was probably the least talented guy on that offense that year for Bama. Just throws it right to him. And Steve Miller, defensive end, catches it on the 40-yard line, 40-yard dash, touchdown, picks it. I mean, just unbelievable. I get goosebumps just watching that and thinking about it. I mean, the turning point in that game, it just felt like, wow, they have it going. They were able to capitalize on a mistake by Bama, and just awesome play call.
So my wife, Steph, she tried to go to sleep at halftime. Like, the stress was just getting to her. And when this play happened, I remember very distinctly, like, running upstairs in our apartment at the time and telling her, you need to get downstairs, because that play felt like, oh my God, this is actually happening. And sure enough, it did. So an incredible game all around, one of the best 3-game stretches in college football history. I think you could argue that, from the Big Ten title game against Wisconsin through the Oregon game. So that's kind of teeing things up. Before we look ahead, let's look at what happened with Clemson. You know, that seems like so long ago, but an amazing game in its own right. I would argue that it was really just a masterclass in how to keep a defense guessing.
Right.
Clemson was just a total mess in that game. And I want to show some videos to highlight why. And Jeff, you can jump in with commentary at any point.
Right.
So, okay, so let's look at this here. This gives you a sense of just how much Clemson was just guessing during this game. I want you to pay attention to the bottom of the screen, kind of the right side of the Clemson defense.
And their sideline is at the bottom of the screen too, just so.
So I'm not sure if you caught it, but this was a theme all game where Ohio State, let's back it up a little bit. Ohio State is in the process of snapping the ball, and look down here, the Clemson defense is just running around and trying to get set. So many examples of the Clemson defense just not knowing where to line up time after time. And as Jeff and I were kind of chatting over the course of the week, I mean, this is like week 1 stuff. This isn't stuff you would expect to find. And here's another example. This is something you would expect to find in a playoff game. Here's another example. Clemson was supposed to be the team that played more games and should have been more fresher or more locked in than Ohio State that only played 6 games at the time. Just another example of Clemson just not being set, guys running on and off, and that was a consistent theme all night. Anything you want to add there, Jeff?
I think part of that confusion and what they're looking for, the Clemson defense, is that they're looking for the call. They're just looking for the defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, to give them the play call. And there was a lot of talk leading up to the game that the defensive coordinator, Venables, calls the play in late because he's trying to see what the offense is going to run, and he won't make a call until he has a better idea what they're going to run formation-wise. And he waits for the coaches that are up in the play box to kind of give him a sense of what they're going to run on offense. He waits too long because he almost wants to have a defense set up that will stop the play immediately, versus if you feel confident in your defense lining up and playing ball, just call a base defense every time and then make checks if you want. But it just seemed like they were waiting to get more information on the offense. And it also goes to the narrative of Clemson potentially trying to steal signs and figure out what Ohio State was doing. And they weren't able to do that because Ohio State, they were doing a muddle huddle is what they call it. The offensive line is standing up, the quarterback's just standing up, all the receivers are standing up, looking at the sideline for the play call. What I was thinking is that they already knew where they were going to run, they were just making it look like they're waiting for the call. They got to the line quick, snapped it, and they were off and running, and Clemson was still waiting for their defensive line alignment and assignment. So I think Ryan Day and the offensive staff schemed it perfectly. They went with tempo going into the game. That was kind of the narrative they got from other coaches who had played Clemson, that, hey, run these guys with tempo. If they don't feel comfortable just lining up on their base defense and playing ball, then make them, off balance by looking over at the sidelines for the play call. So it worked right into Ryan Day's game plan, and then not just running the ball, but play action passes, and then just guys beating Clemson's players with speed and athleticism. I mean, it was a clinic, really.
So as you mentioned, Ohio State went with tempo, and they also huddled up, which is not something Ohio State typically does. And tell us how that works, Jeff, how that would prevent another team from stealing signs.
So if they're huddled up, or if they're in the muddle huddle, they're kind of grouped together, but there's not a play call coming in, it really messes with the defense, because obviously the offense isn't lined up. The D-line can't get in their gaps. The linebackers can't get their spacing right. The corners are kind of just a little more lax. So it makes the defense not ready to play. They're going to wait for the offense to line up and then get down and go. And especially with Clemson, if the offense is running to the line, they're waiting for the play call. It just seemed like they didn't want to get lined up. Even if you didn't know the play call, just get lined up and go and play. And that worked against them, as we saw in the game. So yeah, the defense didn't get lined up because the offense didn't get set enough for them to get their, align and assignments and all that. So it was a tough day for them.
We mentioned in our last session, the preview of the Clemson game, this NFL passing concept called mesh, which Ohio State did run during the game. And I just want to show that right now. So here we go. I'll let the film roll, and I'll pause it just so you can see what Justin Fields is seeing. So right here, you can see this triangle near the 40-yard line that gives Justin just a great short to intermediate read. He can just basically take his pick here, and I'll let the rest of the film run, and boom, right there. That's just too easy when you have a guy who is playing as well as Justin Fields. Anything you want to add there, Jeff?
Yeah, no, I think it's, again, just what we had, kind of laid out in the pregame. It's just making the defense's eyes move from player to player across the field. They're not sure where to jump to in their zone, and you can just run a guy right in the middle between the linebackers, sit him down, and just pop him for a first down. So yeah, it was executed, fantastic.
And before we move on to the defense, I think we just need to take a moment to appreciate what Justin Fields did. This was a player who was just playing with cheat codes. I would say, I don't think this is hyperbole, but it was the single greatest individual effort out maybe of any position in Ohio State history. It's just an incredible performance, and have the guts to come back after the hit and to throw that pass. It was just, regardless of what happens with Alabama, it was just a special moment if you're an Ohio State fan.
Right. No, exactly. And one thing that I noticed, even after the hit by Skalski and the subsequent targeting, the next play he's out, the following play touchdown, and then he gets another touchdown after that. Then the second half, and then after that, throwing a 50-yard bomb, and then another 50-yard bomb, perfect strikes down the field. This isn't a guy with broken ribs or lacerated kidney. He could have had a really bruised up side, but you're not doing that if you're really, really hurt, or you have an enormous pain tolerance, really. Some guys can play through that, but he almost got better after the hit. And he knew what was on the line performance-wise for him, and the narrative about him winning a big game and showing up. And he absolutely met that and exceeded that narrative. So, it was an unbelievable performance by Justin Fields.
And so I want to be mindful of our time and give plenty of time to the Bama talk. So let's talk a moment about the defense. Clemson came out and attacked exactly as we said they would in our last talk. They didn't try and kind of pound the ball into the teeth of the Ohio State defense. They tried to attack the edges. And at the start of the game, this is what Ohio State's defense looked like. Jeff, what are we seeing here?
Okay. This is a base 4-3 defense, four being the down linemen and 3 being the linebackers. So as you can see, the linebackers are, if you look in the middle of the Ohio State defense, the 2 down linemen in the middle, the 2 tackles right behind them, you got 2 linebackers, and the 3rd linebacker is kind of walked out, as they call it. So pretty much between the inside slot receiver and the end of the offensive line. So this is really just a base defense for Ohio State in the 4-3. Usually you'll want to have, and again, just going quickly through personnel groupings, as they call it. If you hear an 11 personnel or a 12 personnel, the first number represents the amount of running backs that are in the game, and the second number is tight ends. In this scenario, it looks like they have a move F tight end in the game, or a fullback, and then you have obviously a running back. So we'll just call that 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end. So as the defense, you'll want to have 1 more guy in the box or between the offensive line and being ready to play the run, as the offense has running backs and tight ends. So Ohio State wants to have Justin Hilliard, the outside linebacker. He wants to be in the tackle box, as they call it, between the offense. He wants to be as close to the line as possible to play the run. So they're aligned, for this formation. That's how they should be lined up.
Okay. So Clemson had a lot of success attacking the edges, and Ohio State adjusted accordingly by doing this. And give me one moment, and here we go. Jeff, tell us how the linebackers changed their alignment.
So instead of having, so the linebacker slid in more to the box. So number 47, who was kicked out a little further, he slid into the box more. The box being inside the 2 offensive tackles for Clemson.
Okay. So changed his alignment. They kind of widened their outside linebackers, kind of widened their alignment a little bit. And I mean, really, after Ohio State made these adjustments, Travis Etienne, the running back for Clemson, really just was a non-factor. And, giving some appreciation to Justin Hilliard, a 5th-year guy who's came in as a 5-star recruit, but just dealt with injuries. He's really playing some of the best football of his entire career. And Jeff, you in particular love this play because this is just attacking the football, and it's just a fantastic tackle. So there's Justin Hilliard right there, Jeff. And what are you seeing?
We walked out. So the first clip that we showed, that was them walked out a little bit to try to defend the outside or the outside, passing game right there, or any of the bubble screens. So so that clip was him walked out. This is one of my favorite plays of the game. Third down, Duff's ETN for a 4th down. It just, great line alignment, great tackle, safe tackle. So that adjustment, right, in this play too, on a bubble screen, right? So he's lined up wider. He's ready to attack the edge. You want your tacklers. I mean, obviously corners and safeties can make good tackles, but you want your tacklers out on the edge to get receivers down. And that, again, just a fantastic play for a loss by Hilliard.
Yeah.
And it also, for the linebackers who may not be as quick to the play as a linebacker, more of a run stuffer, it gives them a little bit of leverage. So if they're too tight between the tackles, if they're lined up too in the middle of the field, it'll be harder for them to reach the edge to make that play, versus if they're already lined up out there, there's less of a distance they need to travel. So it already gives them a little bit of an edge to defend that outside play.
Jeff, is there anything else that you want to add about Clemson and what you observed before we move on to Bama?
I think one thing, a huge observation in the Clemson game for the defense was Shaun Wade. So the star cornerback, he played well. There were some drives he did really well, but there were 2 glaring drives in the second half where he was almost personally responsible for both touchdowns. Just getting beat man-to-man, not even against Amari Rodgers, against Powell, so the other receiver for Clemson. And he's going to really need to step up in this next game against the Heisman Trophy winner. This week, he said that when asked about who he wants to guard or cover in the game, he said, everyone knows who I want to cover in the game. So he's ready for the challenge. I think he just really needs to play sound man coverage. He's going to have some opportunities to jam Smith at the line of scrimmage, but it was a little disappointing, especially in the second half. The game, in the moment, it seemed like Clemson could make a comeback, but then there was a point where it seemed like it was in hand. Ohio State was, doing fine on defense. They really cleaned things up. And then there was just those 2 touchdown drives in the second half for Clemson that, Sean Wade really needed to step up and make a play.
Yeah. That's a great segue to the Bama game, because, we started off by talking about some of the similarities to 2014. Ohio State had this titanic semifinal game against Clemson, and now Ohio State's moving to Bama. And if Ohio State, hopefully beats Bama, we'll have run the gauntlet of Heisman Trophy finalists again. That's exactly what Ohio State did in 2014, where we faced all top 3 Heisman finalists, and we're doing that again. So Alabama, they have the best running back in the country. They have the best wide receiver in the country. They have, and this is based on awards, they have the best offensive line in the country. This is a team that has a load of NFL talent. Not to say that Ohio State doesn't. So this is an incredible challenge for Ohio State. But Alabama hasn't faced a team of Ohio State's caliber either. And Jeff and I spent a lot of time this week breaking down and looking at the Alabama offense, because the Alabama offense versus the Ohio State defense is really going to be where this game is won or lost. And I'm going to show a video here to just kind of encapsulates what Alabama is on offense and what they like to do. And this is from the Rose Bowl, so Alabama's a semifinal game. And QB is Mac Jones. He was one of the Heisman finalists. And I'm just going to let this roll. Okay, so and when we say this is kind of who Alabama is on offense, what that means is Mac Jones is not going to chuck the ball downfield. Alabama is going to look for short to intermediate throws, get the ball out quickly and get it into the hands of, Jeff mentioned Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy finalist, the best wide receiver in the country. Get the ball out of Mac Jones' hands quickly and get it into the hands of someone like Devontae Smith or their running back, Naji Harris. So in a nutshell, this is who Bama is on offense, and it's, obviously very effective. Jeff, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think for the Alabama offense, they are not going to wow you with schemes and play some of the more interesting or big play type schemes that you might see within Ohio State with Ryan Day, and a little more creativity. It's Steve Sarkeesian is the offensive coordinator, just accepted the job at Texas to be the head coach. His offense is geared towards slants, slant and goes, which a slant is the receivers lined up. He snap of the ball, runs directly left or straight to the middle of the field, ready to catch the ball. It's a 5 to 8 yard route max. It's built on getting the ball out quick, like Bobby said, to their playmakers. Their quarterback, Mac Jones, has a 77% completion percentage on the year for throwing the ball, which is outstanding. I mean, that is an extremely high completion percentage. Part of that is of the 379 pass attempts he's made this year, only 53 of those were made 20 yards more down the field. So he's throwing everything a little shorter, quick out of his hand. As you saw in that play, it's a quick play action fake to the running back, like it's a run play, a counter play is what they like to show the defensive front, a counter play. And one step, Mac Jones, ball out of his hand. So again, he's not going to be throwing it far down the field. He's not going to be looking at more than one receiver to potentially throw the ball to, like you'll see with Justin Fields, how he'll go through a progression of this receiver, that receiver, then check down to the running back. Mac Jones is going to do a play fake or just catch the ball at the snap, throw it immediately to a receiver. So it's a very high efficiency offense, and that is part of why they are so successful. They're not going to be doing exotic play calls. They're going to be doing bread and butter play calls to their really, really talented players, and that's why they put up a ton of points. It's scary because they have the talent to do something so basic so well.
So there's a lot to unpack here. Jeff, tell us, so there's a relationship between the defensive line and the secondary. The defensive line needs to, quote unquote, get home or get to the quarterback quickly. But the secondary needs to give the defensive line that time. Just tell us how that works on defense.
So a lot of what the defense is based on is for rushing the passer in the defensive passing game is being able to rush as few players as possible and get pressure on the quarterback. And so you can have more players in coverage, backing off, playing underneath, playing deep down the field, and covering the receivers that are running routes to catch balls. You want to get as much pressure as you can with as few guys and make the quarterback hold the ball or get a sack. With a quarterback like Mac Jones, who likes to get the ball out quick, if the coverage, if the cornerbacks and the safeties and the linebackers can be in their zones and really read what the play is going to be in terms of a passing play, that'll make Mac Jones hold the ball a little bit, and hopefully the defensive line can get there and make a sack. On the flip side, if the defensive line is doing really well against the offense, getting there really quickly, Mac Jones will probably have to get the ball out sooner, and he may not know, or he may not have a good read on who to throw it to on his first read. He could maybe get it out behind the receiver or throw it a little high because he has to rush his throw, and that's when you can create a turnover on defense. So it's a really strong relationship between the D-line and the secondary, and sometimes you'll hear on a game a coverage sack, where the coverage by the linebackers, the safeties, and the corners is so good that the quarterback can't do anything with the ball. He has to throw it away, or the coverage sack is he pretty much just holds the ball and the defensive line just swarms him. So it definitely can impact the game, and it helps both groups out too.
So, Alabama, based on the caliber of their offense, are used to being called, ahead of schedule, which means they're not finding themselves in 2nd and 8 or 2nd and 9 situations. They're 2nd and 3, 2nd and 4. So getting them out of their rhythm and getting them behind schedule is going to be critical for Ohio State. And I want to show a video of an example of, how Notre Dame in the Rose Bowl did this. Give me one moment here. Give me one moment. Right here. Jeff, anything you want to add while I'm pulling this up?
So let me see.
I have some. Here it is. Never mind.
So yeah. So I think. Oh yeah.
Okay. So what is this play? First of all.
So what Alabama's going to do is run a counter. So a counter is they'll be pulling an offensive lineman and probably bringing a tight end around to help kick out the defender on the other side of the offensive line, and then bring an extra blocker on that side so they can run the ball. You'll see it in all sorts of play calls and styles of football, but it'll be called maybe a power or counter. It's just, instead of lining up and running the ball to one side, you're gonna, with just the blockers you have, you're gonna bring an extra blocker around, bring another blocker around to kick out or help block the defensive end of the linebacker, and then have the running back run through the hole.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit play here and we'll see what happens. Okay, so this Notre Dame player that broke through right here. This is the level of disruption Ohio State's going to need on a consistent basis to string these plays out, to get Alabama running east-west instead of north-south for 50 yards. So disrupting Alabama is important. And let's look at another example of what happened against Notre Dame, where Notre Dame had success. Okay. All right, here's the last video. So what is, Jeff, again, what's a cover one robber?
So cover one robber is, so cover one means there's just going to be one player deep in the middle of the field. So the cover one, so it's a safety. He's just in the middle of the field. He's just covering everything in the middle of the field. He's really kind of the center fielder, if you will. And then with cover one, so there's one player deep. Everyone else is man for the most part. So they have a receiver or a tight end or running back that they're man coverage on. Wherever that guy goes, he's going to cover him. Robber is then, so you add that in. So instead of having a cover one man and everyone matched up, you have an extra guy who is going to be running down a little bit where the referee is. So where it says cover one and the player is on the rows, the R of the rows, he's going to be running down the middle of the field and kind of playing, shortstop almost. So that's kind of how you would put it. He's playing in the middle of the field and he's going to be kind of just going wherever the quarterback's eyes are to make a play.
All right, let's see what happens. What did you see there, Jeff?
So what I saw and how this was an incompletion was that the defense got enough pressure and they got in Mac Jones's faces, quick. And they were able to make him throw the ball that he wanted to. I think they got some pressure on the right side of the Bama offensive line. And for a long down and distance, that's a long time for him to hold the ball and just a straight drop back. And they're in a little game up front, a game as in the defensive line shifted or made a stunt one way or the other, and another lineman or linebacker went around the other side. So they're just trying to mix up how they're going to be rushing the quarterback, and it's effective, definitely.
So Notre Dame, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, lost 31-14.
That's right.
So they had success, but still lost 31-14. I think the good news for Ohio State is Ohio State has much better players than Notre Dame. Notre Dame just looked slow at times in that game. And I think Ohio State's team speed is much greater. What's really interesting about Alabama, when you kind of dive into the numbers, so Ohio State's balance on offense is almost perfect. They have 1,906 yards rushing for the season and 1,908 yards passing for the season. Bama, on the other hand, has 4,192 yards passing and 2,238 yards rushing. So, I guess there's, a whole boatload of ways you could interpret that. Naji Harris, arguably the best running back in all of college football, great player, big guy with speed, very athletic, but he's only averaging 115 yards rushing a game. He only broke 100 yards rushing in half of Alabama's games. And Ohio State as a defense tries to keep its opponents under 100 yards rushing. So I think limiting Harris's effectiveness is very, very doable. But it begs the question, based on these numbers, is Alabama maybe not a particularly great running team? We're going to find out. I don't know. But they can certainly sling the football. So as a defense, Ohio State needs to get Alabama to play left-handed, take away its running game. So Alabama, in a sense, becomes one-dimensional. What do you want to add, Jeff?
Just with Naji Harris too, he His rushing numbers, like you had mentioned, Bobby, they're solid. I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, he's a really good runner, but he is, I think, equally as effective in the passing game. And I think we saw that in the SEC championship game against Florida. In the first half, he had 3 touchdowns out of the backfield against the Florida defense. So this is a very dynamic running back who, again, he can make a lot of plays out of the backfield. He's a really solid pass running receiver. And so I think that's another added layer that the Ohio State defense will have to account for. They saw it with Travis Etienne last week, but again, I think Naji Harris is a little more crisper route runner than Travis Etienne. They use him a lot more too. And again, that slant or the quick run pass options and wheels out of the backfield. So that probably factors into his numbers as well.
And other factors here. Unlike Trevor Lawrence, who the Buckeyes played against Clemson, Mac Jones, the Bama QB, is not a running QB. He is the definition of drop back passer, and is going to stay in the pocket and sling the football. So again, we've been talking about Ohio State needs to get home, needs to make Mac Jones uncomfortable. He's not going to leave the pocket. And because Alabama is throwing relatively short passes, I mean, that's just who they are. Ohio State's tackling is going to need to be on point because the majority of Bama's yards are coming after catch. So you mentioned Sean Wade, Josh Proctor, Marcus Williamson, the entire Buckeye secondary and linebackers. They can't miss tackles because the margins are going to be so thin in this game. A missed tackle or two could be the difference.
Exactly. And you're going to want the Alabama offense to get into a passing situation where they're not comfortable, where they're going to be having to go for it on 3rd and 9, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 10, where they're going to be running routes where they're not as comfortable, running and trying to get longer first downs. So yeah, it is absolutely essential. Like you said, tackling in the secondary is huge.
So we have 15 minutes left. Let's talk about some of the intangibles of this game. The mindset of the Buckeye team. Another similarity to 2014, this Clemson game felt like a national championship game.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see, and I don't think the Buckeyes are going to have this problem because it's the national championship game. It's Alabama. But the Buckeyes need to bring that same level of intensity and that same level of just energy and aggression to this game. There can't be any letdown. And I don't think there will be, but the Buckeyes just have to get up again the same way they got up for Clemson, who they had prepared for an entire year.
Right, exactly. No, and it's a great point because, again, you put so much time and effort and thought and reflection into one opponent to potentially be getting a rematch. You get that rematch, you beat them really good, and then you're almost like, now what?
Right.
I think with this team, though, is that not playing as many games is making them chomp at the bit to play more and to play at a high level, because what we all saw was high level football. And they didn't get many opportunities to play that way this year, or many chances. So they want to continue to play and continue to raise the bar. And you're starting to get in the mindset of, are they hitting their midseason form right now because of how many games they played? So that's the flip side of that. But again, like you said, it's a letdown. If it wasn't a national championship game, if this was an away game at Iowa or Purdue after beating Clemson, I would be very nervous for a letdown game. But it's the national championship, so it's definitely a different mindset. I think the guys are going to be ready to go. So
in 2014, Bama only had one game worth of tape on Cardale Jones, and they just weren't prepared for what he brought to the game.
Right.
So, and I think against a team like Bama, you can't have the mindset of, we're going to just line up and do what we do and see if it's better than what you do, because Bama will beat you 9 times out of 10. So it'll be interesting to see what that wrinkle is. Going back to the 2006 national championship game, which we mentioned at the beginning, where Ohio State lost 41-14, the defensive coordinator for that Florida team, Greg Madison, just so happens to be Ohio State's defensive coordinator. And I know that they are kind of digging heavily into what Florida did against Ohio State in 2006, looking at all of the different ways that Florida pressured Ohio State. Because Ohio State was, Troy Smith was limited to, I forget, it was less than 50 yards. So again, we keep on saying it, getting pressure on Mac Jones, expect Ohio State to do things on defense from a pressure standpoint, from a personnel standpoint that they have not done all year. And this has been in the news all week. The availability report comes out tomorrow. Expect there to be some surprises. Ohio State will be missing players, including, from what I have seen, its starting kicker. Jeff, when you're down your starting kicker, how does that change your mentality as an offensive play caller?
I think you have to be prepared to go for two if you're scoring. If you're driving in for a touchdown, you have to have an idea of, should we just try to go for two every time, try to get an extra point? And then also when you're in the red zone and you're in field goal range, you're going to second guess trying to run a different kicker out there, a backup kicker out there to kick a field goal. You'll probably be more apt to go for it on fourth down. So it could open up the playbook. It could be more 4-down football. But again, it's the risk you take, especially going for two multiple times. I'm always very cautious of that. Just take the points, right? Again, with that absence, you're gonna second guess that.
Yeah, I think it all depends upon the situation in the game, but I would expect that Ryan Day will be ultra aggressive in this game and will use all 4 downs at times to get 10 yards.
You're going to see more of that. From my initial thinking is you're going to see more of that from Ohio State than Alabama. I just think Alabama is such a machine in how they operate, a very well-oiled machine. They're going to be more apt to stick to what they like to do, especially on offense. You could potentially see a wrinkle that will break tendency, but I just think they've done so well throughout the year and what they've done. They're going to stick to that. You may see a trick play here or there, or a play that you're probably not apt to seeing them run, but you're going to see more of that from Ohio State. And then on defense too, I think you're going to see a little more creativity with maybe some zone blitzes, different coverages, different alignments up front, trying to really mess with the Alabama offensive line.
It's rumored that Tommy Togiai will be out for tomorrow. Ohio State's arguably their most disruptive defensive lineman. Obviously, that's not great. You'd rather have him in the lineup, but I think Ohio State has plenty of talent to still make that work. Knowing that, Jeff, how would you play around with how would you get creative with the defensive line and the front seven look?
Right. So being down one of your top 2 defensive tackles, you would probably be more apt to do more 3-down looks. So you can do Haskell Garrett, defensive tackle, in the middle as the nose, and then your 2 defensive ends. Work a little more 3-down defensive fronts, confuse the Bama offensive line a little bit, have them trying to make different blocking assignments up to the backers. I think you have a really good staple of linebackers. So when you have that, it's okay to go with less defensive linemen. You want your best 7 out there on the front 7. You want your whatever mix it is. Either that, or you'll just see more rotation. You'll have maybe Antoine Jackson in there a little more. You'll have Cage in there a little more, Teron Vincent. So you're going to have those 3 guys rotating. And I think Haskell Garrett, he's going to be wanting to be on there every snap. And for this type of game, you have to either manage that, saying, rotate guys in every few plays for him, or let him go. But you're going to see hopefully more rotation on the D-line just to keep the guys fresh.
We haven't touched upon the Ohio State offense versus the Alabama defense. It's the Ohio State defense versus the Alabama offense is going to be, I think, the matchup to watch. But even though Nick Saban has built this modern dynasty on the back of great defenses, this is not a great Alabama defense. This defense can absolutely be had, and Justin Fields and the Ohio State offense can do exactly what they did against Clemson to Alabama. I think this game is going to be a shootout, but football games have a way of surprising sometimes. Thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Alabama, so they have a corner who is a really, really good corner, similar to Clemson's corner, projected to be a first-round draft pick. Really good player, but I mean, he can get beat. We've seen him get beat in some games down the stretch, especially in the SEC championship game, beat for a touchdown. Their linebacking core isn't the type of talent you've seen, and their D-line is solid. But again, it's just they don't have those big-name Bama guys that you're used to seeing along the front seven that produce top NFL talent. They're a solid group, but again, their secondary is where Ohio State can attack them on offense. So they have good corner, another okay corner, and their safeties are they're okay. They're 79th in the country in passing defense, so they can be had. Again, I go back to the SEC championship game of Florida. Kyle Trask was able to, continue to keep Florida in the game by beating them in the air. So it's definitely something that this offense, with their stable of receivers and tight ends now, as we saw against Clemson, that can just, move the ball down the field and score at a high rate.
Alabama struggled against Florida's tight ends. And yeah, I think it's similar to Clemson in the fact that, their defense is talented, but there's no one on that defense that you need to avoid. No. Ohio State can run their offense, and I think they can run it confidently.
Right. I think what you saw with Ohio State against Clemson, with Ohio State's offense, is that Clemson's defense looked nervous. You started to see they didn't know what was going on. They were succumbed to Ohio State's offense. I think Bama has that defense, similar defense, that Ohio State can do that on offense. They can really push the envelope and run their script of plays, and Ryan Day can open up the playbook against this defense. It may not be at the same clip against Clemson. I hope it is, but they just the talent that they have, and that the rate at which they're playing now, especially how they just came off the Clemson game, they can put up some points.
We have a good question here, and this is an important X factor. Basically, is Fields going to be able to run the ball? If not, Ohio State becomes one-dimensional. Based on everything that I've seen, I don't think Justin Fields is going to be 100%. I think he is going to be healthy enough to run the entire Ohio State playbook.
Right. I think with Fields, to just get it in the minds of the Bama defense that he can run the ball, you may see some zone reads, some run RPOs early in the game, where if Bama bites really hard, he'll pull it, take it for 5-6 yards and slide. Then you'll start to Bama will say, all right, he's willing to run the ball. We have to respect that. Just look for that early on in the game if he's going to run the ball. He may take some hits back in the pocket. I think he's going to play through that. I think he's probably healed enough now. Obviously, I'm not a doctor, but I think just the way he was able to bounce back in the game, the time off, and the preparation that he's had in practice, being able to practice the last few days at full tilt, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw him deliberately pull the ball on a few zone reads and run at the edge, run out of bounds. Just again, showing Bama he's okay to run the ball.
And on social media last night, I think it was Haskell Garrett's Instagram page. He filmed like a 10-minute ping pong video at the Ohio State Hotel. It was Justin Fields versus like Zach Harrison, and Justin's diving on the floor. He's like really getting into it. He didn't look like a guy who was particularly limited.
Right, exactly. I mean, all players are different in how they prepare, but I was very fortunate enough not to be too banged up in college. But if there was a game where I didn't feel good going in, I wasn't playing ping pong or I wasn't playing anything that exerted too much energy a couple of days before a game. So again, everyone prepares differently. Some guys like to do that, some guys don't. The fact that he's loose, he's playing around, he's getting into it with ping pong. I think it's all good signs for him, really.
And I like the fact that they're loose, that they're having fun. You want guys to embrace the moment and not feel like this is too big for them. You don't want them to have the deer in the headlight look.
Right. And they're talented. They know they can play with Bama. And some Ohio State teams, 06, 07, you almost felt like the talent wasn't there to compete with those teams with Florida and LSU. With this team and in the past few years, they have the bodies, they have the talent, they have the athleticism. So it's a good feeling too going in. It's confidence. And Clemson, I mean, that really helped their confidence for many reasons.
All right. So before we get to prediction time, there's someone here, another special guest who wants to give his thoughts on the Clemson game. Liam?
The score was really good. I loved it. The Buckeyes were really great last night. The Alabama game, I think, is going to be 200 against 22.
200 against 22. All right.
I like it.
Offensive performance in football history.
You know,
Nice. I'm ready for that. Well, who's going to score 200?
Well, Buckeyes.
The Buckeyes. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm really thinking about this game that we might win it, and for the year, it's been great. Buckeyes have really beaten all teams.
Yep. All right. That's it. That's the gospel from Liam.
Does he have a score prediction? Can we get it? Oh, well, no. It's 200.
200 to 22. Okay.
Of course.
All right. So prediction time.
We got to get
It's
our
funny. I felt much more nervous before Clemson. I'm excited. I have, some butterflies for this game, but I'm excited to see what this team can do on this stage. I think it's going to be back and forth. I don't see this turning into a defensive struggle. Ohio State is good enough to stop Bama 3 to 5 times. And the game, I think, will come down to what do they do with those 3 to 5 stops? Can they make Bama pay for not scoring? This isn't a game where you can kick field goals. So personally, I don't, if we had our starting kicker, I wouldn't want him on the field anyways. We need touchdowns. We need to be as efficient in the red zone as we were against Clemson. So I'm going to say that it's going to be 38 to 35 Bama late, and Justin Fields basically goes all Vince Young against USC in 2005. Exposes, rips open his shirt to show that he's Superman and marches OSU down the field for a 42 to 38 win.
Love it. I think keys for me on offense for Ohio State is don't be afraid to, again, open up the playbook, take shots at the Bama corners, really make them, play the receivers tough. And don't be afraid to for Justin Fields, don't be afraid to just make a check down to the back, get a first down, keep the ball in your hands and clock control. I think the more you can keep Bama's offense off the field, the better you're going to play. On defense, I think you need to tackle Smith and Harris. You have to wrap up. You have to make a 2-yard stop versus a first down, 10, 12-yard, 15-yard gain for them. And then keep everything in front of you, right? If they are going to take a shot, which they might, just to break tendencies on offense, you could see Mac Jones take a shot. Keep everything in front of you. Don't give up any big plays. I think Bama's going to come out hot first. I think they're just very calculated in how if they get the ball first, they're going to go down and score. I think they're going to, start how they usually do. They may get out to another lead, maybe a 2-possession lead. I think Ohio State's going to have to get back into the game, get into their rhythm. And I see a 49 to 45 type ball game. I think it's going to be a high scoring. I would want the defense to make more stops, but I think at the clip that the offense is going to be scoring, the Bama offense is going to be getting the ball back pretty frequently. So I think we're going to see a high scoring affair. It's going to be, I think, a great game. So 49-45.
I can see this being a sprint to whoever gets to 45 first or something like that.
Right. It could end with Bama's offense on the field throwing a Hail Mary,
Right.
trying to win the game. So I can definitely see that. So it's going to be exciting.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Well, with that, is there anything else you want to add, Jeff?
No, it's going to be a great championship Monday night. It's a very unique end to a unique season. And I'm really looking forward to it. I think you're going to see, there was a lot of talk going into the college football playoff about, the best teams in the country, that, who's going to be the 4 best teams and the 2 best teams in the championship. I really think you're going to see the 2 best teams playing at the best right now, playing each other. I think it's going to be pretty clear tomorrow night.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully come Tuesday, we're celebrating title number 9 for the Buckeyes. And just enjoy it, folks. It's been, I think Ohio State's going to show up, and win or lose. I don't like moral victories, but win or lose, I think it's a lot to be proud of if you're an Ohio State fan right now. So with that, go Bucks, and enjoy the game, everyone.
Go Bucks.